Hi, I'm back with another Mice of the Round Table book. This is the last one in the 3-book series. I know I skipped the second one, but that's the way I read sometimes. Okay, this one is Merlin's Last Quest. So if you've read the other two, you know that this little mouse is concerned and has had contact with Merlin, the special person with magic. Let's read the first chapter and see once what we can find out. Chapter 1. Raindrops lashed Mouse Squire Caleb Christopher's face, stinging like sharp nettles against his fur. Bolts of lightning ripped across the sky, illuminating the trees in stark black and white silhouettes. "It's no use," Valentia Stormbeak yelled over the accompanying thunder. "We can't fly on in this storm." Caleb clutched Valentina's wings tighter as a gust of wind threatened to throw him off the crow's back. He squinted into the dark, seeking any sign of Cecily Van Maandrake and her kidnapper, Sir Percival Vole. What muddy tracks Caleb had detected earlier were now washed away. "We'll never find them if we stop now," Caleb shouted back. "They've had at least an hour's head start." His chest squeezed together like a tightening noose. None of this would have happened if it weren't for his own outstanding stupidity. His mistakes buzzed inside his head, stinging like hornets. He, Caleb Christopher, last of a line of brave knights and leaders, had unwittingly allowed Camelot's most dangerous traitor back into the castle when it was most vulnerable. Not only had Caleb let the enemy infiltrate the castle, he had also accidentally divulged Camelot's greatest secret to him. What the mice knew as the Golden Wood Throne was actually a legendary treasure called the Grail. It had been entrusted to his family by Merlin all these years, its secret hidden in the designs of the Christopher crest. And now the Grail had fallen into the clutches of a Saxon betrayer, along with Caleb's best friend, Cecily. Caleb's stomach soured at the very thought. He had to make things right again. He had to defeat Sir Percival Vole, take back the Grail, and rescue Cecily. If only the storm would let them catch up to the villain. Valentina, the brave duckling crow who had volunteered to fly Caleb to his pursuit, was losing her battle against the gusting wind. "It's getting dangerous," she warned him again. "We need to fly back to Camelot and wait out the storm." Let's keep going," he insisted. As long as he drew breath, he would hunt Sir Percival down. "I don't want to lose any more time than—" Caleb's world turned a blinding white. Excruciating pain from the hottest heat he'd ever felt surged through his body. An acrid smell filled his sensitive nose. His fur was burning, but there was nothing to be done. Mouse and crow tumbled from the sky, plummeting out of control. The wind screamed in Caleb's ears, or perhaps it was him who was screaming. Then suddenly it didn't matter, for there was no sound at all. Caleb's eyes blinked open. A chandelier twinkled above him. The tiny candle nubs melted by flame into strange shapes. Flame, burning, falling. Caleb sat straight up, jolted by the rush of painful memories. How had he managed to make it back to Camelot? "Whoa there, Caleb." Two sets of firm paws held him back down. "Steady there." His breath came in short jabs, and fellow mouse squires Devon Saverntooth and Warren, clipping, pushed him back toward his pillow. But not before Caleb caught a glimpse of empty beds lined up in rows against the wall. He was in the castle infirmary. Most animals had recovered from the white fever that had ravaged the castle weeks ago. The air felt stuffy with the promise of an early summer day. It made his head throb, as though one of Sister Jezebel's fluttery wimples had been wrapped around his head. "What happened? How long have I been out?" Caleb croaked. The concerned faces of Warren and Devon swam into his vision. Devon was dressed in a green tunic that denoted his new rank of squire. Warren wore a white tunic from the infirmary and had a bandage wrapped around his forehead from when Sir Percival had knocked him out. "When you set off with Valentia, Commander Kensington sent scouts after you," Devon said. The brown mouse spoke in the gentle tone of an older sister, and in many ways she was the closest thing Caleb had to family since his grandfather had died. "She was worried you were acting reckless, out of panic, and—" "Then you were struck by lightning," Warren interrupted, waving his paws in a mind of an explosion. "Kablow! You've been out cold for 2 whole nights. I thought you were dead for sure." Devon elbowed the gray mouse in the ribs. Can you stop being a cheery's head for 2 whole seconds?" "Is Valentia all right?" Caleb asked. The messenger, crow, was nowhere to be seen. Devon's jaw tightened and Warren became somber. "Valentina was badly burned. It seems her wings shielded you from the lightning," Devon said. Her clan came to bring her home to their crow leader. Devon said. Her clan came to bring her home to their crow healer. Caleb buried his head in his paws. The throbbing at his temples turned into a pounding. He was the one who'd insisted they keep flying in the storm. He couldn't let Valentina's injuries have happened for nothing. Caleb tried to get up, but his friends held him back again. "I have to," Caleb protested. "Cecily's still out there." "You're not going anywhere." Devon pushed a walnut shell filled with steaming broth into Caleb's paws. "Massey is leading another search party in the woods." "You are on strict orders from Madame Van Mandrake to rest and recover," Warren said, "and she said you had to drink this." "What is it?" Caleb asked as he sniffed the soup. It was odorless, even though he saw chunks of garlic floating in the broth. There's one more thing we should mention," Devon trailed off, and Warren looked down at his foot paws. An awful dread loomed in Caleb's mind. Tentatively, he reached a paw to his snout. Where he should have felt long whiskers, there were only bristly stubs. Caleb's paws trembled, spilling a bit of the soup. "His whiskers! They were gone!" "They were singed pretty badly from where the lightning struck you," Devon explained, her brown eyes apologetic. "We had to snip them off." He gulped a few deep breaths, trying to keep calm, but it was impossible. What was a mouse without his whiskers? They were key to his sense of smell, balance, and direction. "Are they going to grow back?" Caleb asked, his snout twitching despondently. "That's what the soup is for," Devon said, nudging the bowl in his paws. "Witch bark is supposed to help with whisker growth." Caleb looked at the walnut shell suspiciously and then took a sip. His sense of taste was also dulled without his whiskers. But even so, the bitterness of the soup made him wince. Footpaws pounded down the hall, and a moment later a first-year named Dandelion burst into the infirmary. "Missy's back," the little mouse squeaked breathlessly. "The entire search party is in Goldenwood Hall. The Knights are—" "Oh, Caleb!" She stopped short and looked down at him in dismay. "Your whiskers!" "Aren't so bad," Devon said forcefully as Caleb pulled a sheet over his snout, mortified. That's right," Dandelion quickly corrected. "What I mean to say is the Knights are meeting in Goldenwood Hall right now to hear the scouting report." As Dandelion bounded away to tell the rest of the castle, Caleb looked at Devon and Warren expectantly. "No," Devon said, already knowing what Caleb was going to ask. "You are not going. You only just woke up. Madame Van Mandrake still needs to check you for internal injuries." Other than losing my most important body part, I'm the picture of health. Caleb kicked his blanket off to demonstrate. He tried to stand, but without his whiskers, the floor felt like it was moving out from under him. Devon and Warren caught him and lay him back down onto the bed. Don't feel too bad. Maybe you'll grow over crooked whiskers this time, Warren said. Aren't you curious to know what they found? Caleb asked. Don't you want to know what happened to Cecily? Yes, Warren said, but Commander Kensington said we had to keep a watch on you from now on. You can watch me go to Goldenrod Hall, and we'll all learn what the scouts found. Warren and Devon looked at each other. He has a point, Devon said. With his friend's help, Caleb gingerly dressed and clambered into a mouse-sized wheelchair made of empty spindles. Devon and Warren then rolled Caleb through the underground mole tunnels that led from the two-legged chapel to the throne room, carefully avoiding pebbles and potholes. The spindle wheels squeaked loudly as they rolled, drawing other creatures' attention. Caleb felt his ears turn pink. He knew he must look ridiculous without his whiskers, but he pushed his embarrassment aside. All that mattered was that Macy was back from her search. She was the best tracker in all of Camelot, both inside the castle and out. Maybe she had already found Cecily in the grill, and both were back. But as soon as Caleb entered the grand hall, he knew his hope had been foolish. The empty space where the throne had stood for generations yawned like a missing tooth. A dozen mouse knights had gathered on the stage at the far side of the arena, looking solemn in their gray armor that had not been needed since the Battle of the Bear last fall. They were joined by Camelot's many ambassadors and advisors, General Fletcher from the Bell Tower Larks and the Urgle Throg from the Moat Otters. And in the center of the creatures stood Macy Cornwall. Still wearing the green cloak that allowed her to blend into the forest. All of Camelot's leaders seemed to be focused on something she held in her paws. But from where the squires stood, Caleb couldn't make out what it was or hear what they were saying. This was a mistake, Devon hissed. You should have stayed in the infirmary. No, Caleb whispered back hotly. We need to get closer so we can hear. Before they could finish their argument, there was the loud scrabbling of claws on floor as Madame Van Mandrake burst into the room, her apron flying behind her. What news? Did you find her? Cecily's mother asked. Her fur was disheveled, and her eyes rimmed red. The sash of herbs she normally wore was missing. None of the knights would look Madame Van Mandrake in the eyes. Slowly they shuffled back to clear a path to Macy, and for the first time Caleb could see what the squirrel held in her paws. Cecily's sword. Caleb was glad he was already in a wheelchair. Otherwise, he was sure his knees would have buckled under him. Cecily would never willingly give up her beloved sword. She had saved up for months to have Quills, the porcupine weapons master, make it for her. The nimble rapier was perfect for Cecily's preferred style of fencing, fast and unrelenting. She had dubbed it Whirler. I'm so sorry, Viviana, Macy said quietly. We found this in the woods. There was a pause while Cecily's mother took in the abandoned sword. Then high-pitched wails filled the hall, the sound clawing its way into Caleb's heart like a wild beast and tearing it into two. This is a neat adventure story. I think you'll enjoy reading the rest of it yourself.